We know when it's coming to an end, and we know how it will be. But and we know something even more extraordinary, which is that the rate of expansion of this explosion we're living through is actually speeding up. Our universe is flying apart further and faster than we thought it was. Now, I don't know about you, but I find it, and everyone who studies it professionally finds it impossible to reconcile this extraordinarily destructive, chaotic, self-destructive process, to find in it the finger of God, to find in that the idea of a design. And that's not just because we know so little about it, it's because what we know about it that's essential doesn't seem as if it's the intended result brought about by a divine, benign creator who loves every single one of us, living as we do on this tiny rock in this negligible suburb of the cosmos. So, again, good luck if you want to, but if you're looking for God in the first instance, those are the difficulties you'll have to begin to encounter. If you want to take human history as a vindication, again, I'd urge great caution on you. And I'll take a non-Christian example, if I may, though I think in all cases it's a big mistake to think that your own cause or your own country or your own side has God in its corner. For one thing, it commits the sin of pride, which I know you've been warned against, what the Greeks call hubris. It is probably better, as Abraham Lincoln said, at a time when two sets of Christians were fighting over whether slavery was Christian or not, to decide the future of this union. Abraham Lincoln, who was also likewise not a Christian but a deist, if he was anything, said it might be more useful to find out if we are on God's side than whether he's on ours. But the temptation to enlist the cause of a good God is very strong. Indeed, there are many people in the world today, they're well known as jihadists, Muslim fundamentalists, people who want to kill, really do seriously want and intend to kill everyone in this room, who get the energy they've got and are willing to give their lives because they are so sure that God is with them. And if you want to believe that God intervenes on one side or another, and that God takes a hand in human history and human affairs, you have to grant it to them too. I don't know whether you're ready to do that, or you'd have to say, no, it's only true when we say so, which I think would be, wouldn't it, a rather unsatisfying argument. I'll take the case neither of the Christians nor the Jews but the Muslims. Excuse me, neither the Christians nor the Muslims but the Jews, who say they have a covenant with God, whose testament we Christians, we Western civilization, Christians include in the Holy Book. Those who claim to have met God, or whose leader met God face to face in the Sinai Peninsula, to have received the law, to have had a direct revelation of morality from him, to have a special covenant. Now, let me just say briefly what the problem with that has been for the Jewish religious leadership. About 10 years before I was born, about 50 to 60% of the Jewish people of Europe were put to death in disgusting ways by mass murder, gassing, immolation, in Christian Europe in the middle of the 20th century. And many people wondered how God could permit this to a people who he had made a special relationship with. And many people left the synagogue as a result. They stopped going. The Jewish people are in their majority now post-religious, secular, very largely for this reason. And some rabbis were bold enough to say, no, there is a reason for this. You fell away from God and you forgot Israel, you forgot Jerusalem. It's a punishment for exile, it's a punishment for inattention to the covenant. Many people who'd seen their children burned alive said, I'm not listening to this, I'm leaving the religion. And many rabbis went quiet, thinking perhaps they shouldn't come up with any too instant explanation for such a fantastic human disaster and human crime. And they waited, and then the Israelis won a war in 1967 which got them back control of the holy places in Jerusalem. And then the rabbis blew the ram's horn again and said, no, we should have waited. Now we see the finger of God. It was all to drive us back to Palestine, where we should always have been, and to make us the owners of Jerusalem. Now we see what the design was. Well, I dare say you read the papers and watch the news. There isn't a single Israeli now who isn't wondering whether the victory in that war and the conquest of those holy places wasn't a disaster, hasn't led them into a terrible trap of endless war and confrontation in the Middle East, where their own hubris, their own occupation of other people's territory and holy places has led to a terrible impasse. There. Food, I hope, at any rate for thought. Probably the most I can do today is sow a little doubt and suggest a bit of reading. Then, our bodies. Well, again, I don't know what they've been telling you about Mr. Darwin and about where we come from and our kinship with other animal species, but I consider it a fairly settled question that our resemblance to other primates isn't exactly accidental. It's now possible to measure, in fact, in chromosomes. We are perhaps half a chromosome away from the chimpanzee, our nearest relative. All of you, when you were being born, when you were within your mother's womb, grew a coat of hair about 4 months in, and then shed it again. You don't need it anymore. All of you have an appendix that isn't needed any longer for the kind of digestion that you do. All of you have the same teeth. That's why you have to work on your wisdom teeth so much, and other things for the kind of diet other primates used to have to live on. All of you bear what Charles Darwin himself at the end of Origin of Species calls the unmistakable stamp of our lowly origin. You're a mammal, a primate. Take heart, primates can do, capable of very great things, but we are adapted to an environment, the African savanna, which we abandoned. Why did we abandon it? Because if we didn't abandon it, we were going to go extinct. There was such a climate crisis in Africa all those thousands of years ago that the tiny tribe that was then us made the very smart decision to move north and out and away. It's reckoned by the National Geographic, I recommend you look this up, that the human species was down to less than 2,000 or 3,000 people at that point. And if it had not made this move, would have gone the way of, mark this figure, would have gone the way of 99.8%. 99.8% of all other species that have ever existed on this planet and gone extinct. Now, I just rubbed that in once more. 99.8% of all the forms of life ever to appear on this terrestrial globe are gone, wiped out. And it was nearly us. And this doesn't, to me, give the evidence of a design, of the finger of a god of any kind, let alone one who wishes us well. It rather suggests to me that nature and the world and human life are a struggle. You'll tell me when I've got, won't you, sir, a minute or two. Give me a wave. Thank you. I felt I was getting close to trespassing on Dr. Dembski's time. Now, it's really worth your time to write off to the National Geographic. They'll send you back a kit. You scrub the inside of your cheeks, put it in a solution, send it back. They will show you a map of where your ancestors came from in Africa and at what time and what route they took to get to where you are now. It will be very eye-opening. I strongly suggest you do it. While I have your attention, I also suggest on the matter of evolution that you read a book by Dr. Francis Collins called The Language of God. Dr. Collins, as you may know, ran the Human Genome Project, which analyzed our kinship with other animals, and we now know the whole extent of our genetic code and ID, including the messy gaps in it that are Dr. Dembski's speciality, and brought this in ahead of time and under budget, and is the greatest student of DNA and stem cells and all that go with it who we have amongst us. I would say the greatest American living physician. I am prejudiced. He's a great friend of mine. He's also been a great help to me in my current illness. He's a great American. He's also a great Christian. That's why I recommend him to you. A very strong and believing Christian. And the chapters in his book, The Language of God, that tell you, don't waste your time not believing in evolution. Don't let anyone tell you it didn't take place. Nice, simple, clear, brilliant chapter. Is a chapter you are not educated if you have not read. I'll close and say, because I've got only a minute, why wouldn't I believe in this? Why might one not want to believe in it, even if it could be true? Because my view is that it's not only not true, but it's probably a good thing it isn't. Why is it not a good thing? Because I don't think it's healthy for people to want there to be a permanent, unalterable, irremovable authority over them. I don't like the idea of a father who never goes away. And nor do you if you think about it. When you get closer to parenthood, you won't say to your children, "Don't worry, I'll never die. You won't be at my funeral, I'll be at yours. I'll be at your grandchildren's funeral. You'll never hear the end of me." That's actually not loving paternity. The idea of a king who cannot be deposed, very un-American idea as well as a very undemocratic one. The idea of a judge who doesn't allow a lawyer or a jury or an appeal. This is an appeal to absolutism. It's the part of ourselves that's not so nice, that wants security, that wants certainty, that wants to be taken care of. For hundreds and hundreds of years, the human struggle for freedom was against the worst kind of dictatorship of all, the theocracy, the one that claims it has God on its side, the divine right of kings, the feudal system, the monarchical one against which the American Revolution, with its secular humanism, took place. I believe the totalitarian temptation has to be resisted, and I believe this is one of its core and origin points. And so what I'm inviting you to do is to consider emancipating yourself from the idea that you, selfishly, are the sole object of all the wonders of the cosmos and of nature, because that's not a humble idea at all. It's a very arrogant one, and there's no evidence for it. You'd do better to emancipate yourself from it and do some real study of genetics and biology and cosmology. And then, again, a second emancipation, to think of yourselves as free citizens who are not in thrall to any supernatural, eternal authority, which you will always find is interpreted for you by other mammals who claim to have access to this authority that gives them special power over you. Don't allow yourselves to have your lives run like that. I've exhausted my time. I'm really grateful for your attention. I can't wait to be back. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchens. For both of our speakers, if this might be helpful to you, over my right shoulder in the back, there should be a countdown clock that you'll see counting down for you. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'll give you a couple minutes warning because I can see the clock here in front of me as well. So, Dr. Dembski.
Good morning. Thanks for this opportunity to be here. I'm grateful to Christopher Hitchens and to Prestonwood for giving me this opportunity. I want to address first the existence of God, and then in my next 10 minutes address the goodness of God. The existence of God is really the weightier question. Once that's settled, the goodness of God follows, I would say, straightforwardly. Although I could rehearse standard arguments for God's existence, I want in this debate to take a different tack. Christopher Hitchens disbelieves in God's existence. Why? Lack of evidence and evils perpetrated in the name of religion, he says. In his book, God is Not Great, reveals a more basic reason. Hitchens, as a scientific reductionist, believes science has given us new knowledge, and that it destroys religious faith. What is this new knowledge? According to Hitchens, it is Darwinian evolution. You may ask what a chapter on evolution is doing in a book defending atheism. At the end of that chapter, Hitchens explains, quote, "We no longer have any need of a God to explain what is no longer mysterious." Let this sink in. Religion, according to Hitchens, renders biological origins mysterious. But now that Darwin has come and shown how natural selection explains biological origins, all is clear. Fellow atheist Richard Dawkins put it more memorably. Darwin made it possible to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist. It's no coincidence that Richard Dawkins, the world's best-known atheist, is also an evolutionary biologist. Atheists, like everyone else, need a creation story. Without God in the picture, something like Darwinian evolution has to be true. And so Hitchens, though a humanities guy, lectures his readers on proofs of evolution. Let's look at a few of these proofs as he gives them. 1. Junk DNA. If Darwin got it right, then our genes are cobbled together over a long evolutionary history, accumulating lots of useless DNA, junk, because it's easier for natural selection to keep copying junk than editing it out. This sounds plausible, but it is subject to experimental test. In fact, recent findings show that much of this so-called junk DNA regulates gene expression.